Hello and welcome to a new episode of Treasures in which we visit unique Egyptian sites. So now let's see what we have in store for you today. We'll be back after the break. Today we're coming to you from one of the most important ancient Egyptian sites. It is part of the Memphite necropolis, the area of Saqqara, the first and one of the oldest areas here for king's burials. Actually, this area houses a variety of archaeological sites, starting from tombs dating to the pre-dynastic period up to the Greco-Roman era. Today we will be looking together into the Imhotep Museum of the area of Saqqara. The Imhotep Museum was inaugurated in the year 2000 and houses a variety of ancient Egyptian monuments which were excavated from Saqqara and the area around it. So now let's have a look at it. Joining me now is Associate Professor of Egyptology, Dr. Mohammed Nabil. Dr. Mohammed, welcome with us. Well, first of all, would you tell us a bit about Saqqara and the name of Saqqara?
Actually, Saqqara is a big necropolis, and the name is driven from god Soker, and he was the god of the necropolis. And it is a very huge necropolis in Lower Egypt. So you can see it extends from Dahshur till Giza. And we have actually tombs since the Archaic period till the Greco-Roman civilization. So it is a big and a huge necropolis in the ancient Egyptian civilization, even before the history, before 3100 BC.
Yeah, as you've mentioned, that's the Memphite necropolis, which is Saqqara is part of. And what about the Imhotep Museum itself? Would you tell us a bit about Imhotep?
So actually here we are inside the Imhotep Museum, and Imhotep was the vizier and the architect of King Djoser. And of course one of the main attractions in Saqqara is the step pyramid of Djoser back to 2600 BC. And this complex is very famous because it was the first stone structure existed in the ancient world back to 2600 BC. And actually Imhotep was the vizier, and he was the one who decided to use the stones to construct this huge complex. Actually, Imhotep was a commoner at the very beginning, and he achieved high ranks in the ancient Egyptian civilization. And even on one of the pedestals of King Djoser, we have found more than 12 titles of Imhotep. The word Imhotep means the one who comes in peace, or the one who comes with peace. And actually we have found so many titles like the philosopher, the doctor, the physician doctor, of course, astronomer, and the judge, and he was the treasurer of the king of Lower Egypt.
Yeah. Now, for the museum here, it consists of several halls. The first hall actually has, as you mentioned, part of the pedestal or the foot of the statue of King Djoser. What's the material it's made out of?
Actually, this piece is very impressive because it is a fragment and it shows the pedestal of the statue of Djoser. And this statue is supposed to be a freestanding statue, but unfortunately it's badly destroyed. We can see the feet of Djoser, and you can see that he is stepping or standing on the 9 bows, and the 9 bows are the 9 traditional enemies of Egypt. So he is standing on the enemies of Egypt, and it shows the submission. But just in front of his feet, you can see the rukhid birds, and the rukhid birds are showing the Egyptians. So you can see that here the king is not stepping on his people, but he is stepping on the enemies. However, the Egyptian locals and commoners and the Egyptian subjects are serving their king. The material here is limestone. And this statue is supposed to be a freestanding statue, as I told you before, and it's supposed to be like 160 centimeters or 170 centimeters.
Now, it would have been standing in the area of the step pyramid itself. Now, would you talk to us about that complex in particular? Because it's quite a peculiar complex. It had an enclosure wall and it was quite vast with several elements. So would you talk to us about that complex, please?
Actually, the complex of Saqqara dates back to 2600 BC, back to the time of Neferkhet or Djoser, and the name Djoser appeared for the first time in the New Kingdom period. The complex itself occupies an area of 37 acres of land, so it is a huge complex back to the Old Kingdom period or the Old Kingdom civilization. We have the huge enclosure wall, and it's supposed to have 14 doors, but 13 of them are false doors, and only one real door is located on the southern eastern part of the complex. Inside the complex, we have found something very interesting. We have found a pyramid, and we have found the tomb. So the organs of King Djoser were found in the tomb. However, the mummy or the corpus was found inside the pyramid. And this shows that the king here is buried twice, one time in Upper Egypt and one time in Lower Egypt, because he is the king of both lands. So if he is buried in Upper Egypt, so Lower Egypt will be sad, or the people of Lower Egypt will be sad. So that's why we have the 2 burials or the 2 burial chambers, one in the north and one in the south. And there is something is very impressive about these 2 burial places, that the southern tomb is 28 meters under the ground, and the burial chamber is 28 meters under the pyramid or the superstructure of King Djoser. And also we have found so many components inside this complex. For example, we have found the Hapsat festival, or the whole of the Hapsat. And the Hapsat was a religious festival that the king used to celebrate after 30 years. And in this festival, the king has to kill the bull to show his people that he is strong enough to rule them for the next 30 years. But later on, kings started to celebrate this festival after 3 or 4 years. Ramesses II celebrated the Hapsat or the Set festival so many times. And after that festival, the king has to be crowned one time as a king of Lower Egypt, and then he goes down to be crowned as a king of Upper Egypt. Then he was crowned as a king of both lands, Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt together. That's why in Saqqara, once you go inside the complex, you will see the halls divided into 2 parts, the northern part and the southern part, and blessed by the gods of Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt together. And if you count them, you will see that there are 42 gods of Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt.
All right, now you've mentioned the Hapsat court, and there are other components like the Serdab, the House of the North, and the House of the South. Now, what were the House of the North and the South for?
Actually, these two houses are representing and showing us the palaces of the king, symbolizing Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt, because he's supposed to have two palaces, one in the south and one in the north. So many scholars do believe that these houses were used as treasury rooms to keep the treasures of King Djoser inside the complex. But again, this complex was not for the lifetime of King Djoser. This complex was symbolizing life in the afterlife. That's why if you look at the Hapsat festival or the Hapsat courtyard, you can see that it is located on the eastern part of the complex, because this was one of the festivals celebrated during the lifetime of the king. And once we talk about the lifetime, so it refers to the east, because west was death for the ancient Egyptians. So we have the house of the north, the house of the south, or the southern house, and you can see that the ceilings of these two houses are made out of stones, and they show us the palm trees, because the ancient Egyptians used to cover their houses with real palm trees. But here the palm trees will not live for a long time, so they had an imitation of palm trees, but they were made out of stones.
Now, in the court behind us, where the hall, we have a frieze of cobras as well as the remains of what we call the false door. So would you tell us a bit about the southern tomb from which they were brought and the symbolism of such artifacts?
The southern tomb, actually, as I told you before, it goes down for 28 meters, and we have found steps leading to a small burial chamber, and they found the viscera or the organs of King Djoser. They found the jars to keep the organs of King Djoser. And actually, the entrance of this tomb has a frieze of cobras. But why the cobras? Because the cobra was the god of, or the goddess of protection, because the cobra has 24 hours opened eyes. So she can protect the king for 24 hours. And actually, she can spit poison to the hearts of the enemies or the robbers. So it protects, or she protects, the viscera or the organs of King Djoser. And actually, the cobra was very important even before that, because she was one of the main goddesses of Lower Egypt, because before the unification there was the goddess of Upper Egypt, the vulture, and Cobra was the goddess of Lower Egypt, Imbutu, in the north, right? And later on she became the goddess of protection for all kings.
What about the false door?
The false door supposed to be located on the western wall of any tomb, because actually it was a fake door, and this door was only used for the spirit or the soul of the deceased or the soul of the king, because the ancient Egyptians believed in the resurrection. They believed that they will live again in the afterlife. So the main aim for the ancient Egyptians that the soul or the spirit will come to identify the facial features of the deceased. So they had to make a door or an entrance or an exit at the same time for the spirit. And it was located on the western side, because the west refers to death for the ancient Egyptians. So it was the entrance and exit for the spirit or the soul, the Ka, for the deceased.
Dr. Muhammad, behind me there is a sort of a pillar. What's this pillar, and would you tell us a bit about it?
Actually, it is a door jamb, actually, and it looks like a pillar, and it's made out of limestone, and the name of King Djoser or Neferkhet was found inside a serich or the palace facade. Neferkhet, the divine body, and this is the translation or this is the meaning of the name of the king. And there is also a representation of god Anubis, and he was the god of mummification. And actually a lioness is represented there, and the lioness was goddess Sekhmet, and she was the goddess of wars and battles. But actually this is not a pillar, but actually it's a door jam.
Yes, and on one side there is a serpent as well, two serpents actually in a position.
The serpents or the snakes, as we know, and it's very well known that the snake or the serpent in the ancient Egyptian civilization, or the snake is a sign of protection, and also to keep the treasures safe from the tomb robbers inside. And actually it has a very good representation because you can see the raised reliefs. In the ancient Egyptian civilization, we have two kinds or two types of reliefs. We have the raised reliefs and deep sunken reliefs, and here we can see the raised reliefs which are very beautiful. But this pillar or this door jamb, actually it was reused later on in the 6th dynasty, back to the time of King Teti. And this shows that the ancient Egyptians themselves reused the blocks and they reused their treasures for the other kings. For example, King Djoser goes back to the 3rd dynasty, however King Teti goes back to the 6th dynasty.
Dr. Muhammad, we will be continuing our interview, but right now we will be back after the break. We'll have a short break and we'll continue the interview. Right now we're in the 2nd hall of the museum and I'm still joined by Dr. Muhammad Nabil. Dr. Muhammad, now for this area, and I'd like first, because we forgot to say that actually King Djoser was the founder of the 3rd dynasty and the Old Kingdom. Now around us there are so many monuments, and especially behind us there are fragments of 2 statues of Djoser. So would you talk to us about the various postures of the statues in ancient Egypt and this one in particular?
So let me start with this one in particular, that this statue actually again belongs to King Djoser, and here we can see the king is represented wearing the Hepset garment or the set garment. And as we said before, that it was a festival or a feast celebrated by the king after 30 years. And here we can see that this garment is very simple, and you can see that the king is clenched one hand, or one hand is clenched and the other one is extended. One shows the power and the other one shows the mercy. And actually this costume or this garment was made out of linen at the time. And this statue shows King Djoser is seated, and you can see the throne here is a low-backed throne, and you can see that he is putting one hand on his chest and the other one on his thigh. And if you look at this statue, though it is a fragment, you can see that it is very well represented, and it shows that the ancient Egyptians were very skillful to represent their statues. And we have different schools of art in the ancient Egyptian civilization. We have the school of idealism and the school of realism. Here you can see the school of idealism. You can see that everything is perfect. Even if you look at the fingers, the toes, and his body, or the figure or the representation of his body, it is very ideal. In different periods of the ancient Egyptian civilization, like in Tal el-Amarna, Akhenaten, and Akhenaten, you can see that the figures are different, and this was the school of realism in the ancient Egyptian civilization. And also for the officials, because the ancient Egyptians used to represent their kings in a very good shape. However, for the officials, they represented them in their realities, like the statue of Khaiper in the Egyptian museum. Actually, the statue here is very beautiful because it's made out of limestone, and the limestone is a very soft material to deal with. and it is showing that the ancient Egyptians were very skillful to represent their statues. And actually, the ancient Egyptians were more skillful to carve statues out of different materials. So they used to bring stones from the eastern desert. They used to bring stones from Aswan, like the granite stone, and they used to carve all these statues. And they used their chisels. And imagine the effort and the time took the ancient Egyptians to carve all these statues with the details. If you look at the statues of the ancient Egyptians, you will always see reality. You will see the eyebrows, you can see the eyes, you can see the nose, the cheekbones and the lips, and sometimes you can see the king is smiling. Sometimes you can see the king is wearing the crown, one of the crowns of Upper Egypt, and some other times he is wearing the crown of Lower Egypt. Sometimes he is wearing the crown of wars. Sometimes he is wearing the Hebset garment because here he is celebrating a religious festival. So the ancient Egyptians made these statues because, as I always say, that the ancient Egyptians had no cameras, so they wanted to keep their memories. So they carved these statues to keep their memories and to celebrate certain festivals and certain occasions.
Now, behind us there is this blue faience wall. What is its significance and from where was it found, or where was it found?
Actually, it was found under the superstructure, under the step pyramid of Saqqara, because actually underneath this great superstructure we have found so many things, or actually the scholars found so many things back to 1907. They found more than 40,000 jars made out of alabaster. They found this wall, and actually this wall, it looks like an enclosure wall, and in between you can see different scenes are showing King Djoser is visiting Edfu, for instance, and in Edfu there was the shrine or the chapel or the temple of Horus, and you can see that here King Djoser moved from Memphis, at the time the capital, and he went to Edfu to give offerings to God Horus, and this shows how King Djoser had a full control all over the country. And also we have other scenes are showing King Djoser is celebrating the Set festival. We have one of the scenes showing us King Djoser is running in the open court of the complex, celebrating the Set festival after killing the bull. Because one of the main rituals in complex or in the Set festival, that he has to run after a bull and he has to kill this bull, and afterwards he is powerful enough to rule the Egyptians. So he has to show the Egyptians and his people that he is strong enough to rule them for the next 30 years. That's why most of the kings of the ancient Egyptian civilization, you will see them in different representations. Sometimes you can see that he is wearing a kilt and he is represented with an oxen tail, and the oxen is the sign of power, strength and fertility at the same time.
Now also we'd find here ruins from one of the chapels of the north and the south, as well as one of the geometrical instruments, the diagram. So actually they knew about geometry at that time?
Of course, the pharaohs or the ancient Egyptians who built the pyramids, of course, they knew about geometry at the time. And actually, the diagram is very impressive because it's like a fragment and it's like a sketch, and it helped the architect at the time to make the curve. And it's very interesting that you can see that the numbers are increased on the curves. And actually, it was very impressive that the ancient Egyptians, back to the old kingdom civilization, made the curves. And actually, to make the curve in construction, you will waste a lot of material, and it's very beautiful. And I do think, and other scholars do believe, that the curved walls in this complex symbolizing running after the bull, because if you want to run after the bull, you need the curve to make it easy for the king to catch the bull and to kill the bull. And actually, these numbers are very impressive because it shows us how the walls were curved.
Actually, it's quite impressive because we found many mathematical papyri with some forms of ancient type of trigonometry, and we knew that when they built everything, it has to be orientated with the true stars, whether the Orion, the North Star, so on and so forth. Now, for the construction of this pyramid, what were the most important architectural features?
A lot of features actually, because when we talk about the pyramids of Egypt or all the constructions of Egypt, here we are talking about a drama of civilization goes back to 3100 BC. Imagine in the Great Pyramid, for example, we have more than 100,000 workers and laborers built the Great Pyramid. And here in Saqqara, we do believe that 20,000 or maybe 30,000 workers built this pyramid. To organize such labors, you need great management. So the ancient Egyptians at the time, they had working hours. They used to work hours, and they used to have 1 hour as a break. Exactly, and they used to have their tools, their chisels, and they used to be divided into groups, and each group supposed to have a supervisor. Moreover, from the ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, we have found the titles. We have found the Emira Mesha, for example, the overseer of the army. We have found the overseer of the royal work, the overseer of the Great Pyramid, the priests of the purification of the pyramid of Saqqara, the Wa'ab priest of so and so and so. So the titles give us an idea about the hierarchy ancient Egyptians in their administration. The ancient Egyptians had the scribes, and we had two types of scribes. We had the reading scribes and the others who used to write and to compose inscriptions or to write on the rolls of papyrus. So that's why work in the ancient Egyptian civilization was very well organized. That's why the ancient Egyptians reached a very high rank in construction and in everything.
We have viewed together some of the masterpieces exhibited at the Imhotep Museum. We have looked at some of the statues of King Djoser, as well as many of the other artifacts found in the area, as well as noblemen statues. And by this we come to an end of this episode of Treasures. Until we meet again in another site with another treasure, it's goodbye.